All right, welcome. This video is going to quickly cover a basic utility email and some of the dependencies that it has, as well as one or two, I would say, limitations. So the first thing to be aware of is email falls under the utility section in the builder, and it does exactly what it says it does, which is allows you to email within your flow. So maybe you want to trigger an email for an approval, trigger an email for a notification, whatever that may be, that's the primary purpose. The way you would use it would be very simple. Just drag the email over into the flow and then fill out the appropriate details. I already have one filled out, so we'll kind of take a look at that. We'll send an email, we'll then update it and send another email just to kind of look at your various options. So in my sample email, you'll notice that you do need an authorization to send the email. So if you're using the internal SMTP server, this will already be available for you. If you want, you could always add an external SMTP user, but you will need the server URL and server port, and it only currently supports basic authentication. So I have an example here for an Office 365 user that I have in my tenant, and you can't see obviously the user ID or password, but if you want to use something outside of the built-in SMTP server, you would have to add this yourself. Now, when using the built-in user, you can go ahead and update the map. You'll notice there is no from field here. When I switch this in a moment, you'll see a from field becomes available. But then from there, you just fill in the basic details. Who do you want to send the email to? Do you want to CC someone? If you do, you can choose them from mapped values, custom values, or add one in manually. And then you would add in the example HTML or the subject. Now in this case, I'm sending this email as HTML content. So I've gone ahead and added in the HTML tag, body, heading, paragraph tags, and put some basic information in there. And I'll go ahead and save this. And when I run this flow, apologies for that, it's basically going to just trigger an email to my end user. So if I swap over to my email view, you'll notice I can switch over and we see this is the heading, the example email heading, followed by some paragraph text. And we also see that it comes from Flows Production CyberArk Prod, right? So in this case, it comes directly from that CyberArk.com SMTP server. Switching back to Flows, I did mention you can update this to send through a custom SMTP server. So to do that, if I switch to this Pineapple SMTP user, when I go back to map, you'll realize there is a from value. This should be the email or that user address of that user. And in this case, I'm going to remove the HTML content and just put in, basic email content. I'm sending this to the same person. The only difference is I'm using my personal SMTP user and server, as well as instead of sending it as HTML, I'm going to send it as basic content. So I've gone ahead and saved that. When I run this, I go ahead and wait for this to complete, swap back over to my email view, and I see that I now have a new email. In this case, instead of coming from no reply flows, it's coming from SMTP user. You'll also notice the content is just basic content, not that HTML formatted content. That's really the overview of the email utility. It can be very useful, again, for sending off a notification when there are issues, warnings, or sending an email to get some sort of approval, right? You could easily add this into an approval workflow and include some buttons that bring the user back to triggering another flow if you wanted.